You say, well, that's not very spiritual. Well, there's a lot in the Bible about money. And the reason I decided to do this study on money is because it relates to what's going on right now in our world. It's not just in the United States of America. The last 3 years have bewildered me, and I'll tell you why. Because nothing went along the narrative of the Scriptures. Nationalism looked like it was taking off. America first. Economy was growing. Regulations were being taken out, and government was beginning to get smaller when it came to its pressure on businesses. And we saw the greatest economy in the United States in the last 3 years ever. And in the world, it was excellent. And I'm going, Lord, I don't understand this. Because my Bible says that men would wax worse and worse. That hasn't changed. But perilous times would come. A falling away of the church, which we're seeing that. We're just about on the ground. Let's put it that way. But the world, I expected to see this world move toward globalism, not a resurgence of nationalism. Moving toward globalism, I looked for things that would perplex this world to where when the white horse rider of Revelation chapter 6 showed up, he would be a savior. When the cavalry comes in, it's because there's a need. And when this guy shows up, believe me, there's going to be a need. And I've told the church, I said, I really don't understand this. Maybe it's a respite of God. And I guess for the last 3 years it has been a respite. Hope you enjoyed it, because I do believe it's over. And I do believe now the thing is going to start turning toward what the Bible has been telling us all along. If the rapture's coming, and I believe it is, if that day is coming, then perilous times are coming with it. And I think the church is going to witness some of that. We're not going to witness any of the tribulation period, but we're still going to witness the trouble that leads up to it. And one of the things that this world has done and started in the 1700s is they took over the banking system of this world and took control of it. Took them some time, but they did it. Now we have really only one system of banking throughout the entire world. We call it a fiat system. And the word fiat means by decree. In other words, there's nothing backing up our money, nothing at all. It's a reserve note. It's paper. That's all that it is. You say, what about all that gold in Fort Knox? Well, if there is any gold in Fort Knox, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. It's not backing up your dollar bill. There's not one currency on the planet as of right now that is backed by silver and gold, to my knowledge. They're all paper, and they're all intertwined. The dollar bill is the reserve currency of the world. It's used to purchase oil. Anyone that buys oil has to use the dollar. The dollar is the strongest currency out there because, well, we had the strongest economy when this hit. And everybody is borrowing dollars and buying dollars and this and that. But our government's doing something where they're not being held accountable for what they spend. When you attach to a currency gold or silver, where it's gold-backed or silver-backed, you can't create money out of nothing. You have to have the gold to back it and the silver to back it. The Bible says that no man goeth to war without counting the cost. Well, when you have to actually shell out the gold, you've got to take inventory of how much gold you have before you can go to war, because you got to be able to fund the war. Well, to get around this, they started getting away from the gold standard, 1933, the silver standard, 1948, and by 1971, Nixon completely took us off precious metals backing our money. So your coins are not even worth anything. I showed the difference between a 90% silver quarter, this is before 1965, or 1965 and before, where they were 90% silver, to what they are today, and they're just barely pot metal. So even your coinage is worthless, and you have paper in your pocket. But the bad part about that, I mean, that's bad enough, but the bad part about it is our government now can spend and create money out of nothing as much as they want. You need a check? We'll send you $1,200, $500 for your kids. You need a loan for your business, and you don't even have to pay it back. You say, how are they creating that money? They go to a computer, and with the zeros and ones that a computer works off of, they just and enter. And that money's created. But it's instant debt because it contains no wealth of itself. It's nothing. Just like paper, it's nothing. So it has no intrinsic value. So we just keep printing money. Well, there have been, I don't know how many fiat systems have been out there that have failed. Somebody said 300, and then I found a list in the thousands. Venezuela is going through it right now, where I don't know what they're up to. Maybe it's a million, maybe it's a billion. I told you I've got in here. I showed you this if you were watching it online. This is real currency I purchased. It's $100 trillion. That's what it is. And it's the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe. 100 trillion. They printed that because it was legal at the time. Now it sells on the internet because just having one of these, it's worth more as an example of what not to do. This is how it inflated, okay? Now, let me ask, if your money inflated to this thing, well, to where it took 100 trillion and you still couldn't buy a loaf of bread, how much money would you have? If this were $100 trillion, I could go pay off the national debt. 100 trillion, I could pay off that national debt and have change. Okay? They printed that. Now, what they end up doing is they take all the zeros off, and here's a Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, $1. Okay, and they just keep peeling the zeros. But again, that won't buy much if it buys anything. Why? They're inflated. They printed so much. They diluted the supply of paper money out there, and it just, sooner or later, it will inflate. You say, how many systems like that have failed? All of them eventually fail. None of them have survived. And 30 years is the average. And I think we're beyond that for America. And I say that because they're spending like a couple teenage girls with a stolen credit card. They just think that they can just keep spending and spending and spending. But here's what happens when they do that. There's a lot more currency out there in the world than there is here in the United States. I'm talking about American currency. I'm talking about dollars. And every time they print that money or produce that money out of nothing, they inflate it all around the world. You're going to see the inflation here very soon. Everything's going up. They may tell you, well, there's a lack of things. No, it's going up because of inflation. But everybody else in the world gets hurt. People that don't live near as well as you and are having to rely on dollars, well, now all of a sudden their dollar won't buy as much. So the world is getting sick of America just printing money willy-nilly and not keeping that dollar strong. It's strong now because everybody's buying it, but, you know, it's like musical chairs. Whoever's stuck with it last, well, there you go. Better get your wheelbarrow ready. And I say that because it will happen. I don't know when, exactly when. I thought it was going to happen 10 years ago. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And that's coming. And I showed you last week that it's biblically based of where they got this, this conniving, this plot to take over a money system, because you find it in the temple. The Lord Jesus Christ goes into the temple and he finds a bunch of money changers in there with the animals. Well, that's strange. We'll find out in the Old Testament in Exodus chapter 30, verse 13, that God established the money system. Did you know that? He established it by weight. You don't need a superscription on a coin. All you need is the weight of that gold or that silver, and that's what buys you your products. It says in Exodus 30, verse 13, and this they shall give everyone that passeth among them that are numbered half a shekel after the shekel of the sanctuary. That was the measurement. The shekel of the sanctuary is what God said is a just weight. And everything was measured against that. We have standards. There are standards that we follow. If you want to find the standard for a kilogram, it's in Lyon, France, somewhere near Paris. And in a oxygen-free atmosphere, they've got this cylinder that is 1 kilogram. And the entire world that uses that measurement of the kilogram follows that one thing right there. It's an absolute standard. Well, God God provided an absolute standard of that shekel. And he says here, it's a shekel is 20 gerahs. And half shekel shall be the offering of the Lord. So the Israelites, it wasn't so much coinage. It wasn't coinage. There was no such thing as coinage. It was gold or silver or brass that was weighted. So it didn't matter whether it was an ingot or a coin or a bar or dust. As long as it measured out, that was good currency. Let me give you these. And the reason I say that is God tied that thing to the temple. He tied that thing to himself, because the Bible says in Deuteronomy 25:15, but thou shalt have a perfect and just weight, a perfect and just measure shalt thou have, that thy days may be lengthened in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. In Proverbs 11:1, he said, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. You know what they were doing in the temple? First of all, they had selected a coin, one coin that they would take. And I believe that coin was minted in Tyre. It was a Roman coin. I believe they said, we have no king but Caesar, something like that. So they have this Roman coin that they accept. Now, if you do some research on that Roman coin, the silver in it was all silver when it started out, and then as time went by, because what governments don't take into account is when they fund wars, they always run out of money. So they got to do something. So what they do is they dilute the money supply. They create money. They start halving everything. Well, now it's only half silver. Well, now it's only 1/4 silver. So, but they were accepting. They had these coins that they accepted, and when the Jews would come in from every country on earth, at least at that time in the known world, they would come in for those feast days 3 times a year. They'd come in for Passover, 50 days later Pentecost, and then in the month of September, October, they'd come in for Tabernacles. And when they came, they were not to come empty. They would come, they were able to take their sheep and their cows and their goats or whatever they have, their corn and whatever they produced, and convert it to money, come to Jerusalem for the feast days. That's what you find at Pentecost there in Acts 2. They come there for the feast days. And they were to give an offering to the Lord. The thing is, they just couldn't go to the farm and buy a goat or go to some place outside the temple and buy what they needed. And since they had captured the money supply, it had to be that money. So they had money changers. So they would come in by weight, and they would, you know what I know about exchange? I was on a foreign field for 5 years. I understand money changers. And you got to watch them. And what these guys were doing is, because they may have been giving them coins that weren't weight to weight. It wasn't a just weight. And as a result, they were ripping them off. But that's not the worst part about it. They had captured the market. You couldn't buy or sell an animal that wasn't approved, that wasn't in that temple courtyard. So they gouged them twice. You know, that's what happened. That's what's the world system we're under right now. They control the market. Try buying anything outside of that fiat currency. It's very difficult to do, unless you can find somebody who wants to barter. When silver was on the upswing, there was a guy in Kentucky that would, for a silver quarter, give you a gallon of gas. And he was actually cheating you, because you could buy that gallon of gas for cheaper than what that silver quarter was worth. I showed him, I think I still have it. Yeah. I got a bag of coins here. For some of you that weren't here, you need to know this, because something's coming. And maybe you want to pray about what you're going to do about it. That's a war nickel. It's a 1942 war nickel. It's 35% silver. When right now I could take it to a coin shop, they'd give me maybe a $1 for it. That's how much silver's in it. I could take this nickel to the coin store and he'll give me 2 pennies for it. No, he won't give me nothing for it. You say, why? It's not 35% silver anymore. This silver dollar, one point there was worth about $13, $14. I think it's worth about 10 now. Silver's been going up and down with the market right now. But that'll still buy what it originally bought. It doesn't inflate because it's precious metal. I have the value of my money in my hand. You see that? Now, one way to get around that, because that can get kind of heavy. So, he said, well, we'll store the gold and the silver, and we'll just give you these. You might, some of you might recognize them. Some of you have never handled real money in your life. I'm sorry, you just haven't. I'm dropping everything here. Called silver certificates. How many of you ever seen or heard of them? Okay. Good. Some of the old timers in here have, I guess. We're getting old, ain't we, Joe? This says silver certificate that certifies that there is on deposit in the Treasury of the United States of America $5 in silver payable to the bearer on demand. At one time, you can take that $5 bill, I don't know if they go to the bank or the treasury or whatever, and say, I'd like my silver. They'd have to give it to you. There's a couple $1 bills, and they're no good no more. Now, I don't know, somebody might still take that as currency. I just take them just because it says silver certificate. I'd never seen one for years and years. Just happened to come across those. Here's $1, by the way. Oh, here's the difference. They couldn't even make it the same size. I mean, you know, how much is pot metal? This is what was her name? Sacagawea. Okay, and everybody hates these because they're about the size of a quarter. They're putting them in vending machines by accident. See, what's it worth? I think it's worth about 2 or 3 cents to produce that. It's worth nothing. Same way with a 90% silver quarter. Same way with the dimes. You say, well, surely they didn't mess with the pennies. Oh, yeah, they did. This is a 1968. You see, what's that made out of? Copper. Brass and copper are very similar. They're just the amount of zinc that's in them. So your Bible says gold, silver, brass. We have the same money system that the Bible has for a capitalistic system, okay? Or we did have. Now it's 95% zinc. If you get, this penny is actually worth almost 3 cents. This one, it's not worth anything. Not enough there to even get you anything. Had this ring, I nearly threw it out, and I thought, you know what, that might be gold around here, and I checked it, oh, it said 14 karat, and I said, well, you don't want to throw that out. I said, but I don't know what that ugly looking thing in the center is. I polished it up a little bit, but it was kind of dullish looking, maybe dirty. And I kept looking at it, what is that? And then you get out the magnifying glass, and, oh, that's a $5 gold piece. What that is in that ring. Somebody made a ring out of it. So I've had it resized, and during the apocalypse, I'm going to just carry it. No, I'm just kidding you. But a $20 gold piece used to be worth $20, but that $20 would buy you a suit, it would buy you a pair of boots, it would buy you a hat. Well, the same $20 gold piece right now is worth about $1,700. It will buy you a very nice suit. It will buy you a very nice pair of boots and a nice top hat. That little coin right there, which is smaller than a dime, is worth $400. Because precious metals do not lose their worth. What you have is not worth anything. He said there in Proverbs 16:11, a just weight and balance are the Lord's. All the weights of the bag are His work. Just weights are His work. A false balance is an abomination. God hates that thing. You know where it talks about the oppression of the widow in the Bible? Let me tell you something. When you inflate that money, you oppress the fatherless and the widows. You hurt them more than you hurt anybody else. And America is doing it wholesale. And the Lord's not going to take it. He talks about that widow. If that widow cries to me, he said, I don't have any mercy on you. And there's going to be a lot of people crying out. Something's coming. Then we just went right back to the narrative of this book in 2 weeks. Who says God can't wind this thing up quick? He certainly can if He wants to. In Haggai, if you pronounce it that way, in chapter 2, verse 7 and 8, He says, and I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. Well, that tells me there's going to be a money system in the millennium. It's all going to be based there at Jerusalem. There's going to be, you know how the devil always counterfeits everything the Lord does? There's going to be a money system. And I know where it's going to be at. My Bible tells me there in Revelation chapter 18. Tells me that there's going to be gold and silver and everything you can imagine. It's going to be right over there in Europe. You see, we weren't even following that narrative. Europe was declining. America was growing. China was growing. You watch the reverse start to take place. It's going to be in Europe. And right around a little old country called Italy. It juts itself out there in the Mediterranean. It's got one of the most modern port systems in the world. And you see what's going to happen. All that commerce and money is going to flow through there. Because those Jews attach their money system to their religion. And that's exactly what the Antichrist is going to do, or what the world's going to do, is attach the money system to a religious place. You know, Rome, right there in Italy. This is all coming. And it shows you how fast God can make the thing happen. I'd like to say that, we're going to have, 5 more years of prosperity. I'd like to say that. I don't feel that way. I don't think they've told you that the other shoe hasn't dropped yet. If you've been watching the Federal Reserve before the virus hit, they dropped the rates nearly to zero. They've been printing billions and billions and billions of dollars every night. They called it repo something. Something like repo. It's just another name for quantitative easing. Now they're monetizing the debt. The Federal Reserve will buy any debt. Credit card debt, college debt, debt from the United States, they'll take it all. And you see what they do? They monetize it. This is a debt-based system. So when we tell you that our economy is wonderful, all that means is that people are borrowing money. And that is being invested in works. But the creation of the debt is what makes them think that it's going well. Everybody's broke. Haven't you seen that? Folks are broke. Why are businesses closing, over 2 weeks or a month of being shut down? Because they're leveraged up to their neck. This thing never did get off the ground. It's dead on arrival. I want you to be aware of that. I think every preacher should tell the truth to his people, exactly what he thinks is going on. I've been studying this thing for 12 years, or at least 10, and looking at it very closely. Our national debt are 25 trillion Federal Reserve notes. 25 trillion. That's an unbelievable number. It cannot be paid off. We won't even be able to service the debt. That means pay the interest on the debt eventually. It's through a private bank called the Federal Reserve, who now owns much of our debt and all of our money. Everything you get, every 401k plan, every stock you have, every bond you have, I don't care what it is, it's denominated in this paper currency, in this fiat system. So when it goes, you have no choice but to go with it. Proverbs 22:7 says, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. And this is where it gets, where we'll get into some, not theory of conspiracy theory, but actual conspiracy. And it's not that, I don't think that these bad guys that are out there, are having powwows with the devil. Listen, if you don't believe on Jesus Christ, it's Luciferian. I don't care what it is. I don't care how noble it is. I don't care how helpful it is. If Jesus Christ is not the center of it, it's Luciferian. It's satanic. The whole world lieth in wickedness. How can the Lord say that? The whole world lieth in wickedness. How can the Bible make that claim? Because the whole world lieth in wickedness. They're robbing everybody blind. They've taken all their wealth. What you'll see is the greatest transfer of human wealth ever soon. This plot was hatched out in the late 1700s through the House of Rothschild, if you've ever heard of that. And what it was these Ashkenazi Jews. The father was named Mayer Amschel Rothschild. He had a couple other names in there too, but Nathan, I think, was one of them. But he had 5 boys and 5 girls. And he found out, he became a lender. He started out as a money changer. And he began to figure out how that he could loan money, and I think fractional banking took place under him. That's where they learned to take a certain amount of gold but loan out double or triple what they had. As long as nobody came and wanted it all at once, they were safe. Okay? So, but each of his 5 boys established a national bank in Germany. We're talking about the country's bank. Like our Federal Reserve is not federal, by the way. It's a private bank that prints this money. This money does not belong to you. It belongs to that bank. They just call it the Federal Reserve to kind of hide. Nobody even asked anymore. Like I said, I was in a restaurant. I told the other folks this. I was in a restaurant while we're going through this, picking up some subs, and of course we're 15 feet away and mask, and and they're spraying my sub with some type of antibacterial. I don't know. And they messed up the order, and I'm talking to this guy. He's the regional director in that area. Not a regional manager. He's the regional director. And we're going on about printing all this money at me. He says, yeah. He goes, well, they can't print any more than the gold that's in Fort Knox to back it. And I just looked at him. I almost didn't know what to say. I was like, there's nothing backing your money. You have a reserve note in your pocket. There's nothing backing that money. I guess everybody thinks it's gold backed, but it's not. Each of the 5 boys established a national bank in Germany, France, Italy, England, and Austria. The father started out as a money changer. Here's what he said. He just proved it true. Give me control over a nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws. You see, I like Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is servant. He is a servant to the lender. And no matter what Donald Trump does, and he has done some great, if we'd have had him 20 years ago, it might have made a change the course of this nation. But no matter what he does, it doesn't matter. They can just eliminate it overnight because they control the nation's currency. His son, one of his sons, Nathan, says, I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. His 5 girls all married influential bankers. And this is where, it gets almost into like a genealogy. I can't follow it. But the Schiffs, the Warburgs, the Rockefellers, Morgans, Vanderbilts, it goes on and on. They are all interconnected. They all have the same, they're the ones that work this system out for the entire world. And it's a wicked system. The fact that a good majority of them are Jewish bankers. So you're not against the Jews. No, I am. You're not going to meet anybody more pro-Jewish than me. But my Bible says in Philippians chapter 3, verse 1 to 3, it says, finally, my brethren, rejoice in the Lord. To write the same things to you, to me indeed is not grievous, but for you it is safe. Beware of dogs, beware of evil workers, beware of the concision. He's talking about them Jews. He said there's certain Jews you need to be aware of. Some of the worst operators in this world that have turned people against God and the Bible have been Jewish. He says, for we are the circumcision, because we have a spiritual circumcision, which worship God in the Spirit, rejoice in Christ Jesus, and have no confidence in the flesh. My Bible tells me in Jeremiah chapter 24, verse 3 to 10, then said the Lord unto me, what seest thou, Jeremiah? He said, and I said, figs. Like that fig leaf religion? Figs. The good figs, very good. And the evil, very evil. That cannot be eaten. They are so evil. Again, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, like these good figs, so will I acknowledge them that are carried away captive of Judah. Talking about Jews. Whom I sent out of this place into the land of the Chaldeans for their good. For I will set mine eyes upon them for good. I will bring them again to this land, and I will build them and not pull them down. I will plant them and not pluck them up. And I will give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord. And they shall be my people, and I will be their God, for they shall return to me with their whole heart. And as the evil figs, which cannot be eaten, they are so evil, surely thus saith the Lord, so will I give Zedekiah the king of Judah and his princes and the residue of Jerusalem that remain in this land to dwell in the land of Egypt. And he talks about delivering them over to the sword and the pestilence, and he's going to consume them from off the land. Jewish bankers, philosophers, scientists, movie stars, writers, politicians. There's a whole bunch of them. You say, what? Evil figs. There's some evil Jews out there. You'd be aware of it. The Bible says that that Jew is an enemy of the gospel, but beloved for the Father's sake. I can't emphasize that enough. If the Father loves them, then so do I. That's the way I look at it. But I also am aware of what they're capable of doing. All this works toward one thing, a one-world marketplace. When you control the money and the goods, you control the people. I mean, imagine if you had to have a mark and you couldn't buy or sell. Isn't that what it says? And that no man might buy or sell save he had the mark, the name of the beast, or the number of his name. You see what they do? They control the money supply because it's all digital at that point. And then they control the marketplace everywhere. And you can't buy or sell unless you got that or you got that. Now, you know, you and I ain't going to be there. We don't have to worry about that, but somebody's going to have to worry about it. There already exists a global marketplace, if you haven't noticed, because it's all under a fiat system of money, by decree only. And converting the currency completely to zeros and ones must be pretty easy to do. They created trillions, and they didn't actually print that much. All they did was just tap it in on a computer and hit enter. So I personally believe, and I've talked about this, I mentioned it last week, that I think that the one world money supply will be digital. That's obvious because you scan your hand across there or your forehead, but that it may be gold backed, which the world would love that. Going to a gold backed currency, even if it's digital. The reason I say that is because of in Revelation chapter 18, and I didn't write that down. I read it last week. Oh, no? Let me turn there. I'm sorry? That's 18? Oh, is it 12 and 13? I'm sure that's what it is. 18 verse 12 and 13? Yep. Remember he talks about the kings of the earth have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her? That's that economic. You know, in the Old Testament, God considered when you worked with when Israel worked with another nation or kingdom and was buying from them, but there was these idols that he wanted them to stay away with, he said he committed fornication just by trading with them. It was considered fornication. He says there in verse, she's going to be destroyed. And what happens is that it looks like it's a nuclear strike because it's the other nations that get together to wipe her out because the beast wants it done. And the simple reason for that is you can't have, if Satan be divided against Satan, how shall his kingdom stand? He has two seats then. He has a seat there. The Bible talks about, I believe with the church at Pergamos, talks about the seat of Satan. He has a seat, and the Lord has a seat. The Lord's seat is between the two cherubim, the mercy seat. That's the seat that Satan wants. So he will leave that seat in Rome, an ex-cathedra seat, go to Jerusalem. Well, now he has created two authorities, and he must get rid of one. So he just wipes out Babylon. Talk about being faithful to his flock. But he says there, the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones. Notice the first two things on the list is gold and silver. Look at the last thing on the list. souls of men. That's what's important to her, that harlot. So they'll create a one-world marketplace, and it looks like there's going to be plenty of gold and silver. Who knows? They may even keep it in the Vatican basement. I don't know. It's amazing what they find in that basement. They keep looking around. There'll be a one-world religion, just as Judaism was international and it was tied to a city, Jerusalem. So the world religion today is tied to a specific city, Rome. The verse I was going to read you, Revelation 17, verse 1, and there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, and I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. The many waters are determines nations. It says, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. Everybody's involved with her. Now, they're not now, but they will be. They're involved with the church right now, but this is going to be involved in commerce. Because all the merchants are watching this Babylon be destroyed, and the smoke of her torment is sending up, and they're just watching this thing. And they're mourning over the loss. Well, one of the things the Bible talks about gold and silver being cankered. Well, first of all, nothing hardly reacts with gold. I could bury that ring, dig it up 400 years from now, and it won't look any different than what you see right there. I mean, got to get the dirt off of it, but it'll look the same. But now, you make that thing radioactive. You can't handle it, it'll burn you. I believe he talks about that. You look at the references over there, Revelation 18, talk about burning. They couldn't get near the place. They just watched it. The ships just watched it from a distance. Anyway, move on with that. That's just my idea of it. You have a one-world religion. You have a one-world dictator. Look at Isaiah 28. There's someone interested in, one time studying, you have these questions in your mind. And one of the questions I have is, why did the devil do it? Why did Lucifer rebel? I mean, what? It's not that complicated. You say, why did he do it? Real estate. Goods, merchandise, power, money. In Isaiah 28, look at verse 13. Notice what it has to say here. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Why? Because God placed him there and God made him king over it. Every precious stone was thy covering. That's very interesting to me. Lucifer means light bearer. But God doesn't have anyone to match his glory. Now, if you go over to the book of Revelation, you'll find out that the kind of glory God puts off is the entire spectrum of light. It's all the colors. Did I get somebody a wrong verse? It's not Isaiah 28? It's not Isaiah 28? Ezekiel 28, sorry. Yep, sorry about that. Yep, the mind's going. I put together a message. No kidding, I put together this message, looked in, and I had created it already 4 years ago, and it's almost identical. I've done that twice in 2 months. So either my memory is incredible because I can remember point for point those messages, or I'm losing it. So, and I'll tell you what, I just want to say this: if they don't open these barbershops, there's going to be some violence. Okay, if I turn around, I got a mullet back here. Okay, I just want them to open the barbershops, and let me get a haircut. Okay, Ezekiel 28, verse 13. Yes. Notice it says, thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Yeah, the king of Tyre. By the way, that's always, those kings are represented by spiritual entities, and in this case, he's talking about Lucifer. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. And the reason I say that, there's a connection between those stones and God's glory. Lucifer, light bearer, he gives off light. We talk about lux, the amount of light being given off. It's white light. Isn't that what they say? I saw this white light. Well, not me, man. If I see the white light, I'm heading back the other way. You show me a rainbow of colors, a spectrum of light, and that's the glory that's emanated from God's throne, from God himself. Well, why is he covered himself with precious stones? He's trying to duplicate the glory. He's trying to duplicate the light. But notice there, he talks about the diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee the day that thou wast created. That's why he uses music as a universal language to either deceive a people or get them all worked up. In verse 14, thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. He is that fifth cherub that covered the throne of God. I have set thee so, thou wast upon the holy mountain of God, thou wast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity is found in thee. Choice. By the multitude of thy what? Merchandise. They have filled the midst of thee with violence. And by the way, this verse will fit in the tribulation, because it's going to be about merchandise. He said, I've cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. He's a counterfeiter. But you know what it was? It was over real estate. It was over. Why do you think he shows up in the garden and he tries to ruin it for Adam? Because it was once his. He blew it. And now he was going to, you know what envy does? Envy says, if I can't have it, you can't have it. Much worse than jealousy. Jealousy is you're just jealous of the situation, you know, and usually they're after something you already have. But envy is not being able to get something that somebody else has and say, well, if I can't have it, I'll make sure you don't have it. And that's exactly what he did. But that one world dictator's coming, the same one that was in the garden, and it's all about this real estate. It's all about this world. It's all about this universe. Listen, outside of the physical creation, there's God. He wants what this is. There'll be a one world ID. He calls it all, both small, great, rich, and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark on their right hand and their foreheads. And no man might buy or sell save he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. You see, he's got to brand everybody. That way he binds you to that world currency, he binds you to that marketplace, he binds you to that religion, and he binds you to that dictator. And you're done. Not us, you understand. Okay, I want to look at just a few more verses, and I realize I'm running over, and I've kind of rushed through some of this, but I talked about most of this last week. I've repeated myself. Luke chapter 22. I'll ask every man, every woman, you just pray about this. You just ask God. You say, you going to pray about it? I already did. I already did pray about it. I already did get my answer. So now you need to pray about it and find out what God have you do. In Luke chapter 22, verse 35 to 37, when I read this, man, it jumped all over me. It says, he said unto them, when I sent you without purse, this is when he first sent them out, and scrip, that's a shepherd's bag. You'll find that defined in the Old Testament as a shepherd's bag. And shoes, lacked ye anything? And they said, nothing. Then he said unto them, but now. You see that? But now. Well, he told them first, he goes, you don't need a weapon, you don't need a purse, you don't even need an extra coat or a pair of shoes. I'll provide everything you need while I'm here. He's getting ready to leave. This is his little talk back and forth with his disciples just before he's getting ready to leave. And he says, then he said unto them, but now, he that hath a purse. You know what's in that purse? He said, provide neither for your purse gold or silver or brass. What's in your wallet? Wasn't that good? I'll bet it ain't gold, silver, and brass. He that hath the purse, let him take it. In other words, have it with you. Have it on you. Have it next to you. And likewise his scrip. You know, shepherd's bag's an overnight bag. We call them bug-out bags. Just, you know, just a little clothes, a little, maybe a tarp or something in case you have to sleep out in the open. We've had them prepared for 10 years. We actually had to go in and get out all the food stuff that was supposed to last, but, you know, it's been so long we had to switch it back out. You say, why do you do that? Well, I don't know if you remember, but in Miamisburg, they had that train derailment. And my parents lived right across the river, and it was a phosphorus burning stuff, you know, and we were actually watching it from the Mound Lab where I worked. We were watching it from E building, about the 4th or 5th floor, and could put binoculars right on it. I actually drove by it before it actually started burning brightly. I said, hey, I looked down the track and said, there's a little fire down there. I look like that train's, one of those cars is on fire. By the time I come back, it's totally engulfed, and within hours, man, they had sealed off the area. But they started kicking people out of the city, or they made them leave the city, and then they blocked off the city. And I said, look, you know, a shepherd's bag or a bug-out bag is probably a good thing to have on hand in case this ever happens again, or for some other reason, you know, like a coronavirus. Excuse me, I was hot this morning, burning up. Anyway, but notice he says there, likewise his scrip, and he that hath no sword. Now in the day, it was a Roman short sword. It was a concealable weapon. That's the reason Malchus didn't see it coming. He ducked, but he didn't, lost his ear. Let him sell his garment and buy one. I'm just telling you what the Bible says. I don't need a Second Amendment right to know that I should be armed. I don't need it. I got it and I'm appreciative of it, but if they ever abolish it, it makes no matter to me. The last words of my Savior to his disciples on this earth was, sell your garment, buy a sword. Be prepared to defend yourself. Talk about defend your family. He's not going to be here anymore. It wasn't like, you know, when they came to get him, they all rushed in. So, art thou Jesus of Nazareth? And he says, you know, I am he. And they all fell backwards. They still fall backwards. It just takes a 9mm 45 or something like that. They take a little nudging these days. For I say unto you that this that is written must be accomplished in me. Look what he says. And he was reckoned among the transgressors, that's in the Old Testament, for the things concerning me have an end. So he told them, be able to defend yourself. And I thought it very interesting, and this is my last verse. Turn to Revelation chapter 3. Now, if we went to Proverbs 11:28, 16:16, Zephaniah 1:18, 1 Timothy 6:17, the Bible says, don't trust in uncertain riches. And I'm telling you the same. If God's not with you, gold and silver won't help you a bit. But don't tell me that your paper is better than gold and silver. Say, well, don't trust in gold, brother. I'm not. Are you trusting in paper? Just a question. But in Revelation 3:18, Lord brought this to my attention this week. And I know what he's talking about. It's something spiritual, but it's just interesting that in the last church age, before his coming, talk about the rapture, the last church age, one that's lukewarm, one that's apostate, he says in verse 18, I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire. Now I know some Christians say, well, I would never own that because the Bible speaks. Do you know how many times you find gold in the Bible? The Lord said that the gold was his. The silver was his. Nothing evil about it. It's the love of it. It's trusting in it. It's thinking that somehow that will, you know he's talking about? He's talking about people in the tribulation who think that somehow that gold or silver will save them. Not from the wrath of God, it can't. When the Lord comes back, I mean, you talk about they're hiding in the caves and under rocks to try to get away from him, and they still can't. But he tells that Laodicean to buy gold tried in the fire. I know what he's talking about. He's talking about, he says, buy of me. Because what that Christian should be the most concerned about, not saying you shouldn't be concerned about that, some, but what the Christian should be most concerned about is his eternal reward. And that's gold tried in the fire. You know what I think that deals with? I think it deals with this book and how you view it. I think it deals with doctrine and what you believe. That's gold tried in the fire. So, with that being said, have a nice day. I hate being so negative. But don't you believe the Lord's coming back? Did he say perilous times shall come? I've been looking for him for about 10 years. I'm thinking, oh, Lord, I don't understand this, you know. It looks like things are actually getting better for us. It looks like we're going back the other. We're not headed towards socialism and world domination. We're headed back toward republic and a democracy and all that. I said, I don't understand. We said, well, just give it 2 weeks. You've just seen the biggest step forward of socialism in your lives. They gave away $3 trillion, and they're going to give away about another $3 to $6 trillion. They're going to pay everybody's debt. That's socialism. But somebody ends up paying sooner or later, and what you'll pay with was everything you own. Pray about it. Don't go out and make rash decisions. Don't overreact. But think to yourself, that'll buy me a few groceries. You can go to a coin store and you can get these. You can get that. You can get that silver quarter. Well, right now you can. And they're actually not too, the expensive is not too bad. Silver's pretty low. They call silver a poor man's gold. I'm talking about the middle class. The rich, the middle class, the poor. 3 metals, 3 classes of people in a capitalistic system. You know what happens when you eliminate that middle class? You get Catholicism, you get communism, you get you get a dictator. There's only 2-class system in those. There's the elite and you, the peasant. That's how it works. Okay. I'll put that one to bed. You won't hear any more from me. Any questions? Okay, let's take a break till about